Greetings, everyone. It's Alea Katani, and this is the We Are Our Superhero podcast. You may notice from some previous episodes that I had started out calling this the We Are Our Hero podcast, but there's quite a distinction between being our hero and being our superhero. And truly, we are our superhero. This podcast series is dedicated to life-giving and life-saving experiences in which we have become our own superhero by expanding beyond personally held and societal imposed limits. What it takes to do so is what we'll be highlighting. I'm Alea Katani, hypnotherapist, change agent, and trainer for women to actualize the peace, courage, and true empowerment to realize that all is possible. I'm also the facilitator of the new program, the Superhero Woman Hypnotherapy and Mentoring Program. Many people also know me as the founding director of the 501c3 nonprofit, Keeping All Women Safe, working for the safety and equality of women and girls and the reform of unjust systems in our cultures. These podcast episodes will be real, sometimes raw and deep, so take care of yourself during some of these sensitive topics. As some know, my life has been a demonstration of the need to expand beyond limits and become my own superhero, and I'll be sharing those experiences. May what is shared be a source of great hope to you when you need it most, and may it free your mind and expand your heart. Today, I'm very pleased to have as my guest Ashely Faison-Maddox, daughter of Christ, wife, mom, and a leader in the fight against human trafficking. As the founder and acting executive director of Diamond Collective, Ashely leads with heart and purpose, offering monthly restorative experiences that help survivors of human trafficking rediscover confidence, joy, and community. I'm going to hold this up a bit. A survivor herself, Ashely brings her lived experience and professional expertise to disrupt exploitation and support long-term healing. She currently serves as a commissioner on the Sacramento County Commission on the Status of Women and Girls and is an active voice within the Sex Trade Survivor Caucus. Her policy advocacy has included championing California Senate Bill 1414 to hold buyers of minors accountable, and Assembly Bill 2020 that creates guidelines to identify survivors for law enforcement. Currently, she's working on Assembly Bill 1375, a bill that supports survivors who have children with their traffickers. In family court, and Assembly Bill 379, the Survivor Support and Demand Reduction Act. Ooh, that's a lot. She consults with California law enforcement, training them to better understand and intervene in trafficking cases. Her work is deeply personal, powerfully informed, and driven by a vision to create lasting change. When she's not meeting with lawmakers or hosting restorative experiences, Ashely enjoys playing dominoes with her family and jump roping around the globe. Welcome, Ashely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really
That's
excited to be here.
Yeah, that's such great work. And I know for myself that coming through, moving on in life, coming through a lot of really big experiences and great suffering, to find yourself really making a difference is an unmatched feeling. I mean, I know at the Human Trafficking Summit a couple months ago or a month ago, when I was in another part of the room and I looked back at the table and I saw the signs for keep my nonprofit, Keeping All Women Safe. And I just sat there and stared at that. I mean, I could almost cry right now. It means so much that I have organized form to make a difference for other women. And you are doing so much within the system to do that, which is a huge endeavor. So what would you share with us about your life, your experience, and what it took along the way and now to be and doing and have the life that you have?
Yeah. Um, So first I'll share, I'm a human trafficking survivor. I was trafficked throughout California into Oregon, Nevada, Washington from the age of 16 to 19 years old. And my traffickers, there was five of them, really ingrained in my mind that that lifestyle was all that I really had to look forward to. And sold me a dream that one day I wouldn't have to do it anymore. One day we would have all this money and we would be able to live lavish somewhere. And I really loved the idea of having a home of my own because I grew up in a home that was very toxic and very negative, fueled with domestic violence. Seeing my dad put his hands on my mom very often, I just wanted a safe space. And the idea that I could have a home for myself, a safe space, was something that I hung on to. And I think my traffickers really used that to keep control over me. Um,
You
plus
know,
the
and
fact,
if we just pause for a moment, that's a really significant point because when I listen to story after story of women clients, when I worked for agencies as a social worker, even when I was a mediator, that is a key element in many of the scenarios. The painting of the future picture, the future dream, and it's an illusion. It's not here now, but it's a big strategy. It's a huge strategy to the point where after I woke up and got out of my situation, I stopped. If I was on a date and a man was painting a picture of the future, I stopped him. I don't want to hear it
yeah,
because it is a form of programming.
yeah, yeah. And it gave me hope, that I wouldn't
Mhm.
have to stay in the situation that I was in with my family. And yeah, I hung on to that. And then, just getting out, I really had to hold on to my faith. I grew up in a Christian home, Christian household. My mom kept me in church, and I had to hold on to my faith that I was born for more, that I was made for more, that this was not something that was a life sentence for me, and really had to like for fear of of losing, everything that I worked so hard to gain for my own family, had to hold on to my faith to steer me forward. And so I really, like, a lot of people tell me that my faith is huge, and I like to think it's very small, like a mustard seed, what it says in the Bible. Have the faith of a mustard seed and you can move mountains. But my faith starts off with just a thought, just a thought. What if? What if this happens and it goes really, really well? What if, you know, it all works out and I let myself dream that way so that I'm expecting and looking for the positives, looking for reinforcements of my what if strategy and my what if analysis in my mind. So it's really fun to do that. And I encourage everyone to just dream, like what do you want to do in your life that you're not doing now? And what if it actually happens? What would you need to do? Who would you need to become? What would you need to talk like? What places would you need to enter? How would you need to dress? And so those are different things that I thought about when I was making my moves forward in life. And I landed a job early on with California state government and started dressing more professionally, carrying myself more professionally, and learning ethics, taking trainings, and really allowing myself to um, create a new identity. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of fun with it.
It's interesting because the majority of people do have the thought of what if, but it's worst case scenario. It's
Yes.
not the best. It's not using their imagination for the dream. I teach
Yeah.
this to my clients. We're meant to master our mind and our thoughts. Therefore, if your what if is towards your greatest fear, flip it. Start
Yep.
using your imagination and feeling, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching what it would be like for your life to be different in the positive and the better than you could even imagine. Will
Yeah.
you share with us how you got out of the trafficking situation? You were 19, you say?
Yes. So I was actually not really choosing to leave the lifestyle, to be honest, but I knew that if I didn't, I was going to end up in prison. And that was something that I never saw for my life. I had been in and out of juvenile hall when I was a minor and only did like a couple of weeks at a time. At the most, I think I did 90 days. And I'm just not a girl who's made for prison, in my opinion. So I got my act together and I was like, what can I do differently so that this isn't a possibility in my life to go to prison? And so my mom helped me apply for jobs for the state, and eventually I landed one. And by the grace of God, I'm just able to support my family and move forward that way. There was a lot of imposter syndrome early on, just like you were saying about thoughts of what if usually go to the negative. I am queen for the phrase on top of everything else. And what I mean by that is that I will think about the negative and go down a rabbit hole and think on top of it, everything else, this is happening, this is happening, it's going to end up like this. And when you hold on to those negative beliefs and you choose to think about them, because it's really a choice, it gets addicting. Your mind just continues to go
Obsesses, yeah.
down that pathway. And if you do the reverse, like you were saying, the opposite, it gets addicting as well. You get more focused on the what ifs in a positive way. So that was definitely a challenge for me. I think just recently, in the last couple of years, I've really started honing in on choosing my thoughts. I knew, probably a decade ago that I could choose my thoughts, but I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to stop them right at the core, like where they're at, before they go down a rabbit hole. And so, me getting out, I went through a huge healing journey. I didn't identify as a human trafficking survivor until I was 23. And that was when I first met another leader in the anti-trafficking movement who was also a survivor. And hearing her story, initially, I was like, well, maybe you were trafficked. I don't think I was, though. I think I chose to do this because my trafficker made me believe that we were headed towards this, dream life. And I chose to stay away from home. I didn't want to be with my toxic parents. And I really blamed myself for my exploitation for a long time. So my healing journey really started, I think, at 23 when I first started processing the fact that I may have been trafficked, because that trafficker, or that survivor that I met who was a leader, she said, I think you were trafficked. And she showed me the federal definition of sex trafficking. And I had to process it that since I was underage, force, fraud, and coercion did not have to be present, but they were. But since I was under 18, it was trafficking because somebody else was financially benefiting from commercially, sexually exploiting me.
Right. Plus, Ashley, even though you feel as though it was your choice, there was expert programming going on.
Yeah.
And that is something that everyone needs to realize, that any woman in a trafficking situation or an abusive situation, anybody, the complex psychological matrix is significant.
Yeah.
And judging yourself or even having time to be able to understand and accept that is totally understandable. It's a very complex program. I will share with you that last year, I don't believe this happened, but this year at the Human Trafficking Summit, as I listened to the district attorney from the Portland area talk about the psychological techniques that are used with traffickers, I really recognized many of the techniques that were used on me. Now, I was not trafficked, but the techniques were the same. Mine was more um, spiritual abuse, cult-like abuse. And I recognized that, and I was studying it actually at the same time it was happening. However, observing all that, it made me, number one, realize that I could have very easily been trafficked, number one. Number two, made me kind of wonder if that individual had not done some of that the decade before, because it was line by line the same.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sex trafficking overlaps with every other criminal enterprise. So, for instance, while I was being trafficked, um, I was also forced to steal to provide my own food. So I would go to Safeway, fill up a basket, and like walk out at 16 years old.
Mm.
And I really think what you just described is really something that the public needs to know, that criminal activity, criminal mindsets really overlap in all the different areas. So just because, you weren't trafficked, he may have later trafficked somebody else. Who knows if he was given that opportunity? Because in the game, on the streets, in, criminal activity, criminal enterprises, opportunities are what they're looking for, opportunities to make money. So anything goes. There's no line, there's no ethics. So and I'll take that back. There's street ethics, but people break the rules all the time.
What are
So
the three ethics?
the street ethics.
Oh, the street ethics.
Yeah. For instance, when you were saying spiritual and cult-like abuse, I feel like some of my trafficking had that type of effect on me, because one of my traffickers told me that if I respect the rules of the game, that the game god would bless me, and that there was certain rules. I had to keep my head down. I couldn't look at African American males in the eye, because that meant that I was choosing to now belong to them. And I couldn't even, speak to them. I shouldn't be in the vicinity of them. And sometimes that's out of my control. If I'm walking down the street, and much of my trafficking was street trafficking. And I was also trafficked out of hotels and motels as well. But sometimes you can't tell over the phone when you're speaking to a buyer what race or ethnicity they are. So when they come to the door, you don't know who you're opening the door to. And um, yeah, those are just some examples.
Interesting corollary. And just African American men, not white
That's what
or
I was told.
Hispanic.
Yep.
Interesting.
Because the whites and the Hispanics were buyers to, my traffickers, but other black men or other African American men were a threat because they could potentially be traffickers, and they didn't want me, they didn't want to lose me. So
Interesting. Now, were you able to just walk away when you got that job?
I was already away because I had ended up in jail as an adult, and I was really worried about prison. And I remember my trafficker at the time telling me there's a transitional home that can come and help you. And I didn't know that, that was possible, that they could just walk in and come help me. But the person he referred me to was actually legit. And they came and they vouched for me to the judge that they had a space for me in their transitional home. And that changed the whole entire trajectory of my life. I really feel like that was grace covering me, and I don't take it for granted at all. And I used that opportunity to go back to school, to get a job. At first, it was just temporary fast food jobs while I was looking for the state job with my mom. Um, but when my trafficker tried to get in touch with me, I was really protective over this new opportunity that I had and this grace that was covering me. So I never gave him the address where I was placed at. I stopped answering his phone calls. I blocked his number. I remember at the transitional home, it wasn't a shelter. It wasn't your typical transitional home that we may see now across the nation. I was placed with a family, and the father of the home asked me one day, he said, "Do you like getting abused? This man abused you, right? He beat you, he hit you, he bruised you up." He said, "Do you like that?" And I think the tone and the inflection of his voice and the genuine concern and question that he had shook me to my core. And I immediately just started crying because this is what a dad is supposed to ask. And he
Mm.
wasn't my dad, but he was the dad of the family, showing me that this isn't how you should be treated. So anyway, I stayed away from him, and I'm grateful that I did that.
And it's an interesting topic because um, I remember when I first met my, I call him my evil ex-partner.
Mhm.
Um, and I haven't told this story to anybody. I'm not going to usurp this episode to do so. However, there was a point towards the beginning when a couple who knew him and knew me um, invited me into their house and sat me down and said, not all men are like him.
Mm.
And I was so naive and so innocent, and all I'd known was my father, who was terrifying and explosive, and violence in my home and hatred and no self-validation at all and control. So when they're telling me not all men are like this, I'm just looking at them and I'm saying, really?
Mm.
Like, I couldn't even comprehend anything different. Um, and I was very vulnerable. I was perfect bait returning to college right after my mother had her dying process, and I had dropped out to help the family. And right after that, there I was back in LA and met this older con man, evil man. Um, so yeah, for that light bulb to strike for you, you could have heard that and had it not register, but it was the perfect time for you
Yes.
for it to integrate, and you were in safe surroundings, so you had that support, so you
Yes.
could. I'm so glad for you.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm still in touch with that family. I love them very much.
Oh,
They play a huge role in my life today.
it's almost as though your trafficker wanted to help you, even though he tried to get back in touch with you. He didn't like try to kidnap you or anything, and he really led you to your new life.
Yep. And I try to tell people that too. Like, I don't think me personally as a survivor that I'm supposed to create some type of program for traffickers, but I do believe that there's redemption there as well. So a lot of times traffickers are groomed as well by the former generation of traffickers before them, how to traffic to keep that money within their family. And my heart goes out to them as well. I know that I'm not personally made to interact with them on a daily basis and try to be a part of that redemption, but I know it's there.
Right, right. You had your own path to
Yeah.
follow that
Yeah.
has birthed this advocate and activist and extremely effective nonprofit founder and creator and visionary and all these wonderful things that you're contributing to the world.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you get into the political side right away, or was it your nonprofit Diamond Collective, which um, everybody should hear more about for sure. Yeah.
I didn't get into the political part right away. Um, I mean, as of now, it's been over 20 years since I've been trafficked. So it's been a huge healing journey. After I identified as a human trafficking survivor, I found a therapist and a life coach that helped me for several months, and then started like shopping around to find ones that I could like utilize on a more long-term basis. And art therapy is something that really stuck with me, and I've stuck with my art therapist the longest out of every therapist. And it gives me something tangible to show for my time. I think that as a survivor of human trafficking, time in that lifestyle equated to money. And so, me actually having a painting and something tangible really helps me process that I did something with my time. Um, but the political side didn't start until maybe 2 years ago when I was introduced to Senator Shannon Grove and learned about SB 1414, and that we were going to essentially be going after the buyers and the demand side. And there's this push to end the demand because just like there's traffickers, there's also buyers that are fueling this industry. And they say it's a statistic that it's like a $1.5 billion industry. I don't know how anybody is calculating that, but that's what they say. And buyers are at the helm of that. So I was really interested in that bill. SB 14 had already passed. Actually, I think I met her at the end, the tail end of SB 14, where they were going after the traffickers, making it a felony to traffic children under the age of 18. And then SB 1414, Senator Shannon Grove had a really hard time getting them to have the same guideline that you can't buy a minor under the age of 18 without it being a felony. They made it a wobbler offense, and they made it to where the child has to be 15 years and under. And so 16 and 17-year-olds were left out of the bill. And I was trafficked starting at the age of 16. So it was very personal for me. And so we've gone back. Assemblywoman Maggie Krell this time authored AB 379, which is the, just like you said, the Survivor Support and Demand Reduction Act, and trying to include the 16 and 17-year-olds into that legislation to where it is a felony. It's not a wobbler. It's a felony if you're buying a minor under the age of 18. So we're making a lot of progress with that right now. And also it goes after the demand side. So buyers will be held accountable if they're loitering with the intent to purchase for sex. And so their first offense will be fined $1,000, and then their fine will go up subsequently depending on how many previous charges they've had of this loitering offense. So it'll go up to about $10,000, I believe, which is going to be incredible. And that money is supposed to be funneled into a survivor support fund to fund grassroots organizations, community organizations that are actually fighting to end trafficking and working with survivors firsthand. So really exciting things happening. I really, I think just showing up a couple of years ago to one of the press conferences and learning about the different bills that were in place, and that we were trying to push forward just sparked my interest. And I asked, how can I stay involved? And they added me to legislative like email groups. So I get the inside knowledge of when a bill is going to be heard again, when the next hearing is going to be, There's a survivor coalition that in California, so we're all staying abreast of the different bills that are up and working together, really collaborating with these legislators to make sure that they know that this is real, this is happening. Please don't overlook this. We need some support and sharing the data that different organizations have collected over the years as well that prove this is why we need these bills in effect. Um, so yeah, I hope that,
I wonder if California is one of the most significantly involved and effective in passing these bills and doing the fight, because I don't know. Remember at the summit, the DA was talking about how rarely can they ever charge someone with trafficking. They have to go around to all the other little things that they could possibly arrest the person for.
yeah. No, California's had a really hard time actually with the anti-trafficking movement. And there are legislators that are um, aligned with full decriminalization efforts. So they want to decriminalize they want to decriminalize sex work, which will also decriminalize the buyers and the traffickers. So it lets them off the hook. And I think that's why we're getting so much pushback when we're fighting to end trafficking and in the anti-trafficking movement because there's a conflict with sex work and trafficking. And
Right.
I think too, I have sympathy because when I was in that lifestyle, I did not consider myself a human trafficking survivor.
Mhm.
It wasn't even until I was out for 4 years that I identified as a human trafficking survivor. So I really do empathize with those that are involved in sex work. But I think that if they studied trafficking, they actually looked at what the law says, I think that they would start processing just like I did. I think that women are smart naturally, and that it would eventually click. And of course, there's some people that are like, no, this is what I'm choosing. I don't even have a trafficker. I I would err to believe that somebody influenced that decision and that there's other ways. There's other ways to make money that are more dignified. And sex
And
work,
I would also wonder about the profile of the conditions of that individual as a child growing up.
exactly.
Really take a look at how many of those individuals were the victim of child abuse in many different ways, whether it was neglect, whether it was molestation or incest, whatever it was, domestic violence, whatever it was. How many. First of all, I just know from seeing clients for over 40 years that very few women in particular have had wholesome, well functioning, loving two-parent homes growing up.
Right.
Very few of them have felt loved, have felt cared for, have felt valued, have felt safe. And so you have a vulnerable individual right there. And so I
Yeah.
wonder about with sex workers what that ratio would be of individuals who would even say, yeah, my childhood was wonderful. My father was wonderful. My mother was wonderful. We had no problems. I felt loved and safe. I think it would be small.
Yeah. And have no judgment towards sex workers. I just want to say that because this is a recorded podcast. It's going to be out there publicly. But I have friends that are still engaged in sex work that I was in juvenile hall with as a minor, and we were all involved in trafficking and or we were being trafficked, I would say. So I definitely empathize, and just wanted to share that I have friends that are involved in sex work, and I think they too, if they knew that there was a different way that they could um, restructure their life and not have to feel like they were losing, because initially when you get out of the game, it feels like you're losing. When I was working fast food jobs, I was making in 1 week what I would make in an hour. And it was
Yeah.
really mentally excruciating
Yes.
to look at that. And I had to kind of just put those thoughts and those feelings in the back of my mind to press forward and say, at least I don't have to worry about my life. At least I don't have to worry about somebody walking through the door, strangling me, and me never seeing my son. So, and then that being my son's story, trafficking,
Mhm.
when you're involved in sex work, there's a 1% chance that you're going to survive. So anybody involved in sex work right now, they are the 1%. Think about all the sex workers who are being killed on a regular basis, kidnapped that you never see again. And so when I'm talking about decriminalization and I'm saying that, sex workers um, could be engaging in their own victimization. It's out of care and concern because I don't want you to lose your life. My friends who are sex workers, I do not want you to lose your life. And many of them have children. I don't want your child to be here and their last memory of you be that you were on a date with a buyer and they never saw you again. So,
That's an astounding statistic.
yes.
1% survive
Yeah.
sex work.
According to the United Nations. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's astounding. It's also, I mean, every generation has its stereotype. I know for me, growing up, I watched a lot of movies at home. I kept my mother company a lot. She was very dependent on me. And so I watched a lot of movies that weren't appropriate for a little girl. And somewhere I got the image of the very high class call girl. And growing up, it was like I was also like a deeply, very deep little girl, had visions since very young, very spiritual. And so I wasn't quite sure, like, is my path going to be this high class call girl or is it going to be a nun? And there is a psychological paradigm that I think it's got its own phrase, its own term, and not being a licensed therapist, it's not handy, but um, that was made to seem um, very attractive,
Yeah. For me
very
too.
attractive.
At
Yeah,
16, I was attracted to the lure, to the glamour of what that lifestyle represents. And it's not real. Just like you said
yeah,
earlier, the dream of the future is an illusion, but even the glamorization of what it is in real time is an illusion. And so it's just
yeah. You open the door to someone you don't know, a man you don't know, and close the door, and now you're in a room. I mean, I even advise young women never get in the car with a boy until you know him very, very well on a date. Meet him in town. I tell women my age, I tell everybody, do not get in a car with a man you don't know very, very well, right? But now you're in a hotel room with someone who has expectations that you've agreed to. Yeah.
or that you haven't agreed to, that
Well,
they're
yeah,
that
that's
they're intending to force on you. And
right.
it's there's
Very dangerous.
very dangerous.
Do you have children now?
Yes, I have a 15-year-old son.
Do you talk to him about, I'm
Abs
sure that you educate him about principles and life and wisdom and
Absolutely.
yeah.
I really knew when I had him that I was going to share my story with him one day. And so now that he's a teenager, I've been talking more and more with him about it and what consent is so that he understands when he's, starting to date and has romantic interests, what consent means. And it's actually been fun to see him progress through life and see him grow into a young man. And I'm looking forward um, to our family growing one day.
Yeah. Yeah. I often share um that consent is ongoing consent. You just don't consent at the beginning of an
Right.
engagement and then everything goes. You consent at every spot on the way, or you don't, and that's respected. It doesn't matter at what stage you say no. No is no. What do they say now? No is a full sentence.
Yep.
No is no. Um, you know, Ashely, we're running out of time for this episode, and I'd love to do a part 2 with you because I want to hear. Obviously, it's really important to hear about Diamond Collective. You've created this journal, which I was lucky enough to be able to obtain, and it's wonderful. It's day by day with affirmations and gratitude, and really focusing in on what one needs in their life and what one needs less of. So share with us how people can become involved in what you do, and then let's set a date for part 2 to talk more about consent, more about the Diamond Collective, and more about this life-changing work that you're doing in creating a new world for others. How can people reach you and get involved?
Absolutely. So my website is diamondcollective.org. It is, there's a newsletter pop up that'll come and you can enter your email, stay abreast of the latest happening with Diamond Collective. You can also email me directly at ashley@diamondcollective.org, and I can stay in touch with you, let you know what I'm working on, and how to get involved that way. We do have volunteer opportunities in California. Hopefully, in the coming years, when we establish more funding, we will be able to branch to different states across the nation. And I'm looking forward to hopefully doing a restorative experience in Oregon. So, Diamond Collective provides restorative experiences once a month to human trafficking survivors. And we do it in such a great creative way. I love what we have going on. If you were to come, we do invite allies and supporters to our restorative experiences as well. So if you were to come, you would not know who is who. We don't point out and say, oh, you're a survivor, you're a survivor. And we don't do anything like that. We create a safe space for women to just engage with each other, build community, and have a great time once a month.
Yeah, let's definitely talk more about this
Yeah,
on the part 2. So
absolutely.
people can, these links will be below this podcast
Okay.
link on my YouTube channel. And so that people can be a part of your work and know what bills you're working for. More about the Diamond Collective in our next part 2. People can reach me through alchemizechange.com, through alchemizechange.com/superhero. It's actually our superhero. That'll be down below for the new program for women. Um, keepingallwomensafe.com. You can contact me through that website for the nonprofit. And if you feel that you'd be a wonderful guest on this podcast, you have a story to tell with significant um, and important information, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to email me, alchemizechange@gmail.com. So we will meet each other again. Everyone should know I met Ashely at the Human Trafficking Summit this year, and everyone is beautiful and everyone has unique and special character traits. But there's something about Ashely that um, so touched my heart. She just has such a glow and such a heart that I actually went up to talk to her the second morning and started crying. I couldn't help it. Ashely has a profound and transformative effect in bringing people into their hearts. So stay tuned for part 2 when we have more conversation with Ashely. Thank you so much.